All right. All right. So Jay and I here are recording this here to show you something interesting I looked into in the Rails API for routing the other day, and I found a reason to apply it in a change we were doing. So um, here's what we have changed to. And what I want to show here is that the param value on there. So originally, if we were to look at the routes and see what this looks like as far as Rails is concerned, we'll see an output there, which will show a more RESTful route setup. Right now, learn GitLab as a URI is nested inside of a project and namespace. So in order to use this project ID as the usually what you would use for a show is an ID, right, on a controller. But the ID in this case is the project ID, and so we're nested inside of it. So the only way to that was being used before was, and this just recently changed from a it used to be index. That MR got merged that I did to change it to a show. So it used to be a an index action there, and that index action was merely using project ID as a parameter to find the project, which was the thing you were nested inside of already. So as far as RESTful routing goes, that really felt like it should have been a show, a member function of the thing you're nested inside of. So that's the change that was made there, and we can see it show up. Let's see if I can find the right one. Right here. So this was the one for the show action. As you can see, it's using the project ID, and it's saying right here as part of it is it's using the project ID from it. So it shows up as just the learn GitLab inside of the project as the show action. Now, what we wanted to do was I wanted to move continuous onboarding. And so right here, I have this line here is for a deprecation of route in case there's any, when we roll out this issue, in case there's any this merge request in case there's any current instances that may be, or people's browsers, which may be sitting on that continuous on one of our pages, and they might go to the old route. So it needs to be there to redirect for a, at least a release or so, a release of .com or so. So that's why this one is here. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to move this continuous onboarding from the welcome controller, and we're trying to put it underneath here. As a member function. So it's a member function because we were able to say the traditional param here is ID by default. So we were able to change it to ID or to project ID. And so when we do it like that, it'll quack exactly like we want it to and give us this right here. And so now this gives us a RESTful route where we can go in the UI and say, okay, I'm going to learn GitLab. I'm inside this project. So you'll have your namespace name here. We convert IDs to the names in the URLs. And so it'll say your namespace name, and it'll say the project name here. And then inside of that is learn GitLab, which is a show action, and then a resourceful routing of onboarding, which is our landing page.
Nice.
So I wanted to go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, do you mind showing the controller for? I know I've reviewed it, but I think
Sure.
for this recording, I think it'd be good to see.
Sure, let's look at that controller. So here's the old controller to see where it was coming from, the welcomes controller, and you can see here is the action. And then we moved it to the learn GitLab controller, and you can see here is the new action right here. One thing we needed to make sure of is we brought the layout of minimal, since there's a learn GitLab layout file being used. We had to override that with minimal, which was being used in the welcome controller.
Thanks.
So that's that one. And where I got this from was, I found this interesting because, routing to me in Rails is one of the most interesting areas because you can there's things in that API I haven't even looked at in like it's been years and I haven't even used param, right? And this is just something I found. And like my initial thought on this MR was that so my initial thing was I moved this to I didn't use a resource and I was just using another Git route, just two Git routes. And then I'm like, you know what? There has to be a better way to do this. Why can't I? So I was banging my head up against. I want to use resource, but if I use resources, which would give me index show, everything like that, and I could use show then, but it'd be the only show. The problem is that now this had to be learned GitLabs, and I'm like, I don't want my URL to look like that. I don't want to have an S on there because it doesn't make any sense. And so by default, then I had to still say controller name here because it wants to find learn GitLab still. Um, so I had to direct it that way. But so then I started I tried to get it to work with the resource. I couldn't for a day. So I just went back to using the get routes. I submitted my MR, made sure it was, the pipelines were passing. And then I went back and I was like, then a couple of days later, I'm like, you know what? I really want to look at this again. And that's when I looked at this again and I started looking for this concept right here. And so the named parameter. So I started reading more into this right here. And as you can see, there ain't much about it, right? There's this little blurb. And if you
Yeah.
don't understand that little blurb or get it from there, right, then you're not gonna, I wouldn't say it's hidden, but it's not like widely publicized to use this thing, I would say, um, to use this concept. And so that's why like maybe it's like one of those things where you may not come upon it in years until you might want to use it, right? And so anyways, that's what I found was interesting, and I decided let me give it a try here. And we have a few other instances in the app where people use it. I haven't seen it used yet for Project ID, but I see it used on something like name and something else. You can look in our routing files. So I put it there, and I'm like, this makes a lot of sense to me now. It feels really good because it's like it has nothing. Learn GitLab is nothing without the project that it's inside of. So it's really inside of the project. And it's really about the progress of technically it's about the progress of the namespace because that's what the onboarding is about. But we're basing it off of a project. You have to be inside a project to show learn GitLab. So it really made sense to me that this was not trying to find another container, even though and be resourceful inside of the resource that it was already inside of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So anyways, that's what I thought was cool. I thought I'd share that. And that's it.
I'll stop the recording.